certainly in around 1960, 61, I started to get very interested in listening to this show on a Sundays, because it was the only kind of show where they played kind of modern records really on the light programme. And I was also tuning into Radio Luxembourg on a crystal set that my father had bought me. One of those fantastic little crystal record sets that you bought from Headquarters and General Stores up in High Holborn. These wonderful stores where everything seemed to be advertised with the tagline, "Latest Russian Miracle." And the other tagline was when it went, fantastic volume from a whisper to a roar, enough to fill the largest hall. But of course you ended up listening to it on these tiny headphones. And tuning into Radio Luxembourg really, and listening to it for that phased signal under your bed sheets. And funnily enough, there was an offer on there saying, advertising the New Musical Express, and you could send off for a copy by enclosing a stamped addressed envelope, and you just hardly ever saw it for sale in the shops. And the idea of a kind of pop music weekly absolutely fascinated me. So I sent off for it, and sure enough, 2 weeks later a copy of NME arrived. And it was all Cliff and the Shads and so on and so forth. And I remember it was before the Beatles came out, so it was still beat before the Beatles. I mean, and there begun really a lifelong fascination with the music press, and I've spent the last 30 years working full-time in the music press, but that was where it all began. The first gigs I started going to were, funny enough, at Silver Blades Ice Rink in Streatham, because I grew up and was brought up in Streatham. And I can always remember the first gig that I went to on my own was the very Monday that the Kinks' You Really Got Me went to #1, and I actually saw them that night. They did what was called a personal appearance. Well, they actually came on and played for like half an hour. And I remember I was thrilled because I got their autographs that night, and I must have been then 13 years old. So I started going to gigs on my own at 13. And over the weeks at Streatham Ice Rink, they had Nashville Teens, the Pretty Things, all manner of bands really. The Kinks were, along with the Beatles and Stones, were absolutely my favourite bands. And then when the Who came out, and certainly the Pretty Things as well, but the Who really grabbed me. I think because I was studying art at school, and their whole thing with the feedback, with the quite aggressive sound, and also all the pop art and op art imagery, and of course the clothes, because it was the kind of, I would say, more attractive end of mod, because there was quite an unattractive side of mod, which was the whole kind of bullying side of it really. The whole front that the Who put across, I think, was well, it was just everything you'd kind of ever wanted really. And we actually then started to go to the Locarno in Streatham as well, where they had bands on, so we go and see the Small Faces. I remember a memorable performance by the Who in December 1966, where they wrecked all the gear, and it was at the time when Happy Jack was out, and by which time their sound was becoming more innovative, and of course the Yardbirds were doing all these innovative things with sound, and I was really drawn to feedback and weird guitar breaks and Eastern modes on the guitar. And of course by that time I discovered blues as well, mainly through John Mayall, Eric Clapton Blues Breakers.